back to my channel, beautiful minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I have a little book haul for you. I actually was planning to kind of do this a little bit like vlog style, like I've done in the past, of showing you some clips of the shelves because I went to my favorite used bookstore, McKay's. And a lot of times I'll show you what's on the shelves while I'm shopping, and my older sister was in town from New Hampshire and I only get to see her a couple times a year, and so I was gonna have her in some of the clips, maybe even ask her if she wanted to share some of the books that she found as well, but that all went out the window because we were having such a great time visiting together and chatting together that I completely forgot to take any clips at all. And those of you who have family members or friends you live really far away that you only get to see a few times a year, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. All the catching up is just so wonderful. So I have all the books here to share with you, and I will have them split up into genres. So if there are some genres you're more interested than in others, you can check out the timestamps and skip around. Okay, so let's start with middle grade. I think all of the middle grades I have actually are historical fiction. So the first one is a Jennifer A. Nielsen book. I've read several of her books. I really like her historical fiction. This is one that I personally hadn't heard of, but probably a lot of you have, and that's The Scourge. And so this is a historical fiction that takes place, I think, during the Middle Ages and during the time of the plague. Although I don't know if this is fully historical fiction or not, because it's talking about a plague sweeping through the land, and the main character, Ani, is unexpectedly captured by the governor's wardens and forced to submit to a test for the deadly scourge. She's even more surprised when the test results come back positive and she's sent to Attic Island, a former prison turned refuge and quarantine colony for the ill. However, Ani quickly discovers that she doesn't know the whole truth about the scourge or the colony. She's been caught in a devious plot. So I'm feeling like this has more to it than just historical components. I also got two Lauren Wolk books. So I got Wolf Hollow, which is a Newbery Honor book that I've heard lots of people talk about. It was published in 2016, so before I started trying to read all the Newberys and Newbery Honors every year was when it was published. This takes place after World War II, I think, and I know it deals really heavily with bullying, and that's pretty much all I know about it. Really do love the cover though. But I think I love this cover even more, Beyond the Bright Sea, and this one won the Scott Odell Award. So this one did win an award as well, and it says 12-year-old Crow has lived her entire life on a tiny isolated piece of the starkly beautiful Elizabeth Islands in Massachusetts. Abandoned and set adrift in a small boat when she was just hours old, Crow's only companions are Osh, the man who rescued and raised her, and Miss Maggie, their fierce and affectionate neighbor across the sandbar. So this one sounds really good as well. I also found this book by Karen Hesse, and she wrote Out of the Dust, which I read earlier this year and enjoyed, and it's called Stowaway. I love the cover of it so much, and this is supposed to be a recreation of Captain James Cook's sailing from England on the HMS Endeavour, beginning a 3-year voyage around the world on a secret mission to discover an unknown continent at the bottom of the globe. So, okay, I was looking because I just wasn't sure, because Out of the Dust is free verse and this is not. This does have some illustrations in it as well, which I didn't realize, but it looks like this is written in journal entries, so kind of like captain's log style. So that's really interesting. So it was only 50 cents, as you can see. So I was interested. I'm just going to call this next section miscellaneous, because I think we have like a mystery type book, and then we have, I don't know if it's historical fiction, and then I have a translated Japanese book. So it's really kind of a random hodgepodge that don't really fit into a specific category. All three of these books, I don't want to do a category for just one book. That just seemed kind of silly. So McKay's has a bin outside of books that they didn't accept to sell on their shelves, but people didn't want to take back. And so you can just take those books for free. And in there was a Phyllis Whitney book, The Ebony Swan. And I feel like I've heard someone talk about Phyllis Whitney, and I don't remember who, but I figured it was free, so it's worth a try. It says Susan Prentice has come home to Virginia's eastern shores to find her past. 25 years ago, her mother fell to her death down the steps of the family's ancestral home. Susan has little memory of that accident or of her maternal grandmother, Alex Montoro, a proud, intense, aging doyenne of the ballet. But Susan's arrival has alarmed people who fear what may lie dormant in Susan's memory. So, sounds interesting. Then I've had a lot of people recommend Anne Patchett to me, and they had the Dutch House there. They had a bunch of copies of it, and this is the book of hers that I'm probably the most interested in reading. So my sister and I both got a copy of this with a plan to read it together at some point, but I've had multiple people recommend the Dutch House to me, and then a few people recommend Bel Canto to me as well, and Bel Canto wasn't there, but the Dutch House is. So my sister and I got this, and we're gonna read it together, and I'm really excited about it. I really hope I like it. I think it's historical. Yes, it says it's at the end of the Second World War. Cyril Conroy combines luck and a single canny investment to build an immense real estate empire, propelling his family from poverty to enormous wealth. His first order of business is to buy the Dutch House, a lavish estate in the suburbs of Philadelphia. Meant as a surprise for his wife, the house sets in motion the undoing of everyone he loves. So yeah, I'm really curious about this. I think I've only really heard good things about it, and I probably didn't even need to read a blurb for you because I feel like most people have heard of this book. The last book I have is No No Boy by Joan Okada. So this is a book that on the back, it has like some blurbs from like Ruth Ozeki, and it says that like this is the very first Japanese American novel. And this is about a boy who said no twice to agreeing to serve in the United States military and swear loyalty to the United States when he was living in America during World War II. And so this was kind of like swept under the rug initially because it says on the back it was published in 1956. And so there was a lot of trying to erase Japanese internment camps and the way that Americans had ill-treated Japanese Americans. And so it kind of like flew under the radar for a while. I don't think it's really under the radar now, although I hadn't heard of it, but I'm really interested in it. And the fact that it was only $2 made it a no-brainer for me to pick it up. Okay, final categories, classics. I know you're surprised. I have a fair bit of classics. It's my largest stack here. And I have some that are books that I have read, that I purchased, and some that I have not read, mostly ones that I have not read. So the first one is a Steinbeck I've never heard of, The Short Reign of Pippin IV, and I don't really know much about it because these editions don't have a whole lot of information on the back. All that I know is it's supposed to be a comedy, and I'd never heard of it. So this is another one that my sister and I both picked up, so that way we could read it together at some point. I also found a Daphne du Maurier, The Glass Blowers. This is actually one of her historical fictions, which I haven't read very many of, I don't think. I have a couple of them, but I've read a lot more of her thrillers. I think she's a lot more well known for her thrillers, but she actually wrote a lot of historical fiction. And this one I think is set in France during the time of the French Revolution. So I thought it was interesting. Love du Maurier's writing style, so definitely willing to give it a try. I also found 2 Ayn Rand books, and I haven't read anything by her. I feel like I've heard most of Atlas Shrugged, and I think Fountainhead, is that the other one? I can't remember. So anyways, these were like 90 cents, so I figured I'd pick them up. So one of them is Anthem, and this is super interesting because it's got the actual book in the front. And then you get to the back, it has the book again with all her editorial notes and changes and things that she made, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I also found We the Living. So I don't think this one is just a regular book. It doesn't have that thing. It's actually quite large. It's bigger than I think it looks. It's like 500 pages. So yeah, I don't really know anything about these stories or anything like that, but I've just been hearing about her for years and years and years. So I figured I would pick her up and give her a try. I think she writes a lot of stuff about kind of like dystopian feeling things, but maybe I'm getting that wrong. This one in particular, We the Living, says that it has as its theme the struggle of the individual against the state and portrays the impact of the Russian Revolution on 3 human beings who demand the right to live their own lives and pursue their own happiness. So yeah, I guess maybe it's more historical, but it does have a lot of stuff that feels very politically charged, which I think dystopian often does. It's often, you know, trying to portray political things because government usually plays a huge role in dystopian books. So I guess that's probably why I made that association. I really, really love Washington Irving, and I found this really adorable edition of Tales of the Alhambra. And I say it's adorable because it feels like really short and small, and it has really, really pretty illustrations sprinkled throughout. So I was really excited to find this one. The next one I have is a book I've never heard of, and that's Caleb Williams by William Godwin. I'm not sure if this is the same William Godwin who married Mary Wollstonecraft, but that's kind of who I thought it was, but I'm not really sure. So it says it has a plot like a suspense thriller. It was written in 1794, I think, yes, in which Caleb tracks down his master, Squire Falkland's guilty secret, only to be pursued himself as a potential betrayer. And it just sounds really, really interesting. So I had to pick this one up. I've never even heard of it before. If you've heard of it or if you've read it, let me know. I love reading old classics that inspired either newer classics or works today that have like their prevalence. So I found The Castle of Otranto, which is a thriller type story. I say thriller, it's old, but it had a lot of resonance for books like Mysteries of Udolpho, which then rippled into Northanger Abbey and rippled into just a lot of these like more gothic suspense stories. But I think it's quite a bit older than all of them. In fact, it actually has an introduction by Walter Scott. I should try to see if I can find when it was actually published. It doesn't say in the beginning, but Horace Walpole was born in the 1717 and died in 1797. So it was published sometime in the 18th century, which would have been well before, you know, some of the publications of the Regency time period and Victorian for sure. I was really excited to find this Penguin Classic edition of some of Pushkin's prose. I haven't read that much of Pushkin. I've only read Eugene Onegin. That's the only one that I have read. But I was excited to find this, and it has several different stories in it. So the one on the front is the tales of the late Ivan Petrovich Belkin, which is Tales of Belkin, I assume. And then there's the history of the village of Goryokino, probably mispronouncing that, Roslavelv, Kierdzali, a tale, Egyptian Nights, and A Journey to Arzum at the time of the 1829 campaign. That last one is quite a wordy title. So anyways, I was really excited about this one. I found this Louise May Alcott entitled Work, which I've never heard anyone talk about before. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing, because I can be a bit hit or miss with some of Louisa May Alcott's lesser known works. So we'll kind of see how this one goes. But it says that it's about a girl named Christy Devon, raised by her aunt and uncle in rural New England, who is determined to seek a meaningful life in the larger world, to be a useful, happy woman. But her search for success becomes a deeper search for fulfillment, with Christy discovering the possibility of work as spiritual sustenance. It sounds like this was probably heavily influenced by transcendentalism and her father, just based on that like little blurb, but I guess I'll find out whenever I read it. The last book I have here is one that I've read, but it's also the one that I'm the most excited about. This is a book that I definitely wouldn't have purchased myself, but my older sister was really sweet and bought it for me. And it's this beautiful, beautiful edition of Tass of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. You've heard me talk pretty recently about Hardy because I just read The Trumpet Major for Victober last month. And you probably heard me mention in that video that I have like a wide range of experiences with Hardy, and I have several of his that are like 5-star, absolutely perfect, and I love, and this is one of those too. So I love this book. This book is very tragic, very sad, meant to really exemplify the way women were mistreated and kind of like the double standards of morality and behavior for men and women in the Victorian time period, and I just really love it. So it's super beautiful. It's got gilded edges. The end papers are like really cool looking. They're kind of like holographic. It's got a ribbon bookmark, and I didn't realize till I was flipping through it when I was showing my parents, it has some illustrations and stuff in here. as well, but it's just really lovely and makes me very happy. Well, those are the books that I got at McKay's with my sister. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Have you read any of these books? Are there some of these books that you are intrigued by? Maybe you haven't read them and you'd like to see me read them sooner rather than later. Would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.